Chapter 1. A chance encounter. The sun dipped low over the horizon, casting long shadows across the bustling streets of the city. Its golden light reflected off the tall buildings that stretched up to the sky, their glass surfaces shimmering in the evening warmth. People hurried through the streets, lost in their own worlds, their faces illuminated by the soft glow of streetlights beginning to flicker on. Lena walked at her usual pace, her leather bag slung over her shoulder, her head down as she focused on the road ahead. She had just finished a long day at work, her mind consumed with thoughts of deadlines, meetings, and the responsibilities that seemed to grow by the hour. But even in the midst of her busy life, there was always an ache, a feeling she couldn't quite place, an emptiness that lingered, no matter how many hours she worked, how many people she interacted with. It wasn't loneliness. It was something deeper, something unnameable. Her thoughts were broken when a figure stepped out of a cafe, and in the rush of people passing, they collided. The force wasn't hard, but it was enough to throw Lena off balance. "Oh, I'm so sorry," the stranger said, reaching out to steady her. Lena looked up, startled, and found herself meeting the eyes of a man she had never seen before. His face was kind, framed by a mess of dark wavy hair that fell just above his eyes. He wore a casual navy jacket, the sleeves rolled up slightly, and his expression was apologetic, though his eyes sparkled with an unspoken curiosity. "No, it's my fault," she replied quickly, adjusting her bag. "I wasn't looking where I was going." The man gave a small, apologetic smile, his eyes still locked on hers. For a split second, it felt like time paused, like the entire world held its breath. Lena's heart skipped a beat as something inside her stirred, a feeling she couldn't quite explain, but one that felt familiar and unsettling at the same time. "I should be more careful," he said, his voice soft but warm. "Are you all right?" She nodded, blinking a little to shake off the daze she had suddenly found herself in. "I'm fine, really. Just a little surprised, I guess." He smiled again, this time a little wider, revealing a faint dimple in his left cheek. "It's not every day I run into someone like you," he said, and Lena couldn't help but feel the weight of the words. There was something different about him, something magnetic. She felt an undeniable pull, though she couldn't explain why. "I'm sorry if I made you uncomfortable," he continued, though there was no sign of discomfort in his own demeanor. "I'm Lucas, by the way." "Lena," she replied, her voice barely above a whisper, her heart still racing. "Well, Lena," Lucas said with a soft chuckle, his eyes crinkling at the corners. "Would it be too forward to say that I'm glad we collided?" Lena blinked in surprise, then laughed, the sound more genuine than she had expected. "I think you're pushing your luck there," she teased. But even as she said it, she felt the warmth between them linger in the air. "Fair enough," Lucas said with a playful grin, clearly undeterred. "Well, I hope I haven't ruined your evening. If you ever need someone to blame for making you late, I'll happily take the responsibility." She smiled, a little taken aback by his charm. She didn't usually entertain these kinds of casual encounters, but there was something about Lucas that made it feel effortless. "No harm done," she said, her voice softening. "But I do have to run. I'm already late for dinner." "Dinner?" Lucas raised an eyebrow. "With someone special?" Lena hesitated for just a moment, but the easy chemistry between them made her feel comfortable. "Just a friend," she replied. "But now I'm definitely going to be late." "Well, I'll let you go," Lucas said, stepping back with a final glance at her. "But maybe if you're free another time, we could grab a coffee?" Lena's heart skipped again, though she quickly pushed the sensation aside. "Sure, why not?" she replied, a faint smile tugging at her lips. "I'll hold you to that," he said, his tone light but sincere. She nodded, glancing back at him before she turned to walk away, her thoughts still swirling with the encounter. As she walked down the street, a strange sense of anticipation filled her chest. She didn't believe in fate, at least not in the way some people did, but there was something about that brief moment that felt too significant to ignore. She glanced back one last time. Lucas was still standing there, watching her with that same soft, knowing smile. For the first time in a long while, Lena allowed herself to wonder what might happen next. Chapter 2. Unexpected Connections. The days following her brief encounter with Lucas were a blur of responsibilities, mundane tasks, and familiar routines. Lena found herself distracted more than once, a strange feeling bubbling to the surface each time she recalled the way Lucas's eyes had locked onto hers, how easily they'd fallen into conversation, and that lingering warmth she couldn't shake. She had given him her number, though she wasn't sure why. It wasn't like her to offer such personal details to someone she barely knew. But something about the way he made her laugh, something in the way he had spoken to her, made her believe that this could be different. A brief moment, yes, but one that held the potential for more, if she allowed herself to believe in it. But even so, life had its way of moving forward, sweeping her along like a river that didn't care about the dams she built to keep her emotions in check. Her phone remained silent, and she went about her days, reminding herself that it was probably for the best. Maybe Lucas had forgotten about their brief exchange. After all, it was a fleeting moment in a crowded city. Then, 4 days later, her phone buzzed on her desk, the vibration sharp and sudden. It startled her, breaking her concentration as she reviewed a presentation for the following day's meeting. Lena glanced at the screen. It was a text from Lucas. Her heart gave a small, unexpected jolt. Lucas, hey Lena. I know it's been a few days, but I've been thinking. How about that coffee? For a moment, Lena just stared at the text, unsure of how to respond. Part of her wanted to be cool, to brush it off and act as though it didn't mean anything. But another part of her, the part she had learned to suppress for years, felt a flutter of excitement. She had convinced herself that there was no real connection, that it was just a brief, pleasant encounter and nothing more. But now, there was the opportunity to see him again, to see if that initial spark was just a momentary thing or something deeper. With a quick breath, she typed back, Lena, I'd love that. How about tomorrow afternoon? It wasn't long before his reply came through. Lucas, sounds perfect. I know just the place. I'll meet you at 2. She felt an odd sense of relief at his ease, his unhurried approach. It was different from the rushed, high-pressure dates she'd been on in the past, where everything felt forced and weighed down by expectations. This felt simple, unplanned, but exciting. Lena, 2 it is. Looking forward to it. The next day, Lena arrived at the cafe a few minutes early, pushing open the door to the cozy little place that had an earthy, rustic vibe. The soft hum of quiet conversations, the smell of fresh brewed coffee, and the low glow of warm lights made it feel like a hidden gem tucked away from the city's frenetic energy. She liked it immediately. It was peaceful, inviting. It felt like the kind of place she could breathe without worrying about the world around her. She found a table by the window and sat down, glancing out at the city as the afternoon sunlight filtered through the glass. It felt strange to be so relaxed, so open. She rarely let herself feel this way, especially not with someone new. Minutes passed, and just as she was starting to wonder if maybe she had gotten the timing wrong, she saw him. Lucas entered the cafe, his wavy hair slightly tousled, his jacket casually thrown over one shoulder, a soft smile tugging at the corners of his lips. When his eyes landed on her, they lit up, the same spark of recognition she'd felt in the moment they first met returning in full force. Lena. He said her name with a kind of joy, like he was genuinely happy to see her, and for some reason that made her heart beat a little faster. Hey, she said, smiling as he approached her table. I'm glad you made it. Of course. Wouldn't miss it, he replied, taking a seat across from her. His eyes never left hers, and the way he looked at her made her feel like she was the only person in the room. They ordered their drinks, a comfortable silence hanging between them as they waited. It wasn't awkward though. Felt right. Easy. So, Lucas began, leaning back in his chair, his gaze thoughtful. I have to admit, I've been wondering. What made you decide to meet up again? I mean, you don't seem like the kind of person who says yes to strangers on a whim. Lena laughed softly, though there was a hint of uncertainty in her voice. I guess. I've been thinking about that too. And to be honest, I'm not sure. I guess there's something about you that just felt different. Like, I don't know, it was just easy. Talking to you, I mean. He raised an eyebrow, clearly intrigued. Easy, huh? That's rare. I think I can say the same about you. She looked at him, studying his expression, and for the first time in a long while, she didn't feel the need to guard herself. There was no rush, no pressure. It was just two people sharing a quiet moment, getting to know each other. No strings attached, no past baggage to contend with. It was refreshing. So, what about you? She asked, sipping her coffee. Why me? Why this? Lucas smiled, his eyes twinkling with a sincerity that made her stomach flip. I think sometimes when you meet someone you just know. I don't know how to explain it, but there's something about you that caught my attention. And I'd like to see where it goes. Lena's heart skipped at his words, though she tried to play it cool. You don't waste any time, do you? He chuckled. I'm just honest. She grinned, her nervousness slowly fading as the conversation flowed, natural and light. They talked about their lives, their favorite books, their experiences, and even their weirdest childhood memories. There was no rush, no expectation of anything. Just two people connecting in a way she hadn't thought possible. As the afternoon wore on, the cafe emptied around them, leaving them alone in their little corner of the world. Lena felt a sense of peace she hadn't experienced in ages, and for the first time in a long while, she allowed herself to think that maybe, just maybe, this could be the start of something real. Chapter 3: The Unspoken. The following days after their coffee date passed in a haze for Lena. She had never experienced such an effortless connection with someone before. There was something about Lucas's presence that felt like a balm, soothing and yet thrilling, like standing in the quiet after a storm. It was as though, in that moment of meeting, the world had momentarily shifted, just enough for her to see the possibility of something more. She couldn't stop thinking about him. But Lena wasn't one to dive headfirst into anything, especially when it came to matters of the heart. Her past had taught her to be cautious, to keep her emotions tucked away behind walls that she'd carefully built up over the years. But with Lucas, she wasn't sure how long those walls would last. For the first time in what felt like forever, she allowed herself to admit that she was curious. Curious about him. About the way he made her feel like she was important, like she mattered in a way she hadn't experienced in years. It was frightening yet exhilarating. As the days stretched on, they continued to meet up, casually at first, but soon it became clear that their connection was deepening. They shared stolen moments after work, brief text exchanges that seemed to carry more meaning with each passing word. Lucas had a way of making her feel like her thoughts and feelings were heard, understood, and even appreciated. One evening, as they sat in a small park near her apartment, Lucas surprised her with a question that felt strangely profound. "Lena," he began, his voice serious, though his gaze softened as it met hers. "What's the one thing you've always wanted, but never had the courage to go after?" Lena blinked, caught off guard by the suddenness of the question. They'd been talking about the mundane details of their day. What they'd eaten, the annoyances at work, the small joys of a quiet evening. But now Lucas had pulled them into deeper waters. She didn't answer immediately. Instead, she looked at him, his face open and genuine, waiting patiently for her response. There was no judgment in his expression, no rush to fill the silence. She thought about it for a long moment, wondering how much of herself she was willing to share. Was she ready to open up to him completely? Could she? Her mind flashed to the dreams she'd given up on, the goals she'd set aside for the sake of practicality, the love she'd convinced herself she didn't deserve. And for a brief moment, a rush of vulnerability washed over her, the kind that felt both terrifying and liberating. "I've always wanted to live without fear," she admitted quietly, her voice barely above a whisper. "To trust people again, to trust myself. I used to have so many dreams, so many things I wanted to do, but I buried them. Life sort of took over." Lucas didn't interrupt. He just listened, his gaze never wavering. His hand reached out, gently resting on hers. It wasn't a grand gesture, just a small, tender touch, but the warmth of it seemed to speak volumes. "Maybe it's time to stop burying them," he said softly, his thumb brushing over the back of her hand. You don't have to do it all at once. Just take it one step at a time. And if you want someone by your side when you do it, I'll be here. Her heart skipped a beat at his words. She didn't know why it affected her so deeply, why his simple promise of support and patience felt like such a revelation. But it did. For the first time in years, Lena allowed herself to believe that maybe, just maybe, there was room in her life for more. More than just work. More than just the quiet routine of her day-to-day existence. More than the walls she had built. As the weeks passed, Lena and Lucas spent more time together, their connection growing stronger with each shared conversation, each shared experience. Felt so natural, so right that it almost seemed too easy. There was a magnetic pull between them, an undeniable chemistry that neither of them could ignore. They took walks around the city, discovering hidden cafes, quiet parks, and overlooked corners of their world. They spent evenings in bookstores, browsing through shelves of books, talking about their favorite authors, sharing stories of childhood memories. It was the kind of slow-burn romance she had always dreamed of but never truly believed would happen. But with the growing closeness came a nagging fear, one that Lena had been trying to avoid acknowledging. What would happen when the truth about her past came to light? What would Lucas think when he learned the full extent of the hurt she had experienced, the baggage she carried with her every day? She had built a life that was protected, controlled, safe, and Lucas was slowly but surely dismantling it. With every laugh they shared, every moment of vulnerability, the walls she had spent years building were starting to crumble. It was one late evening after dinner, when the moment arrived, the moment she knew was coming but had been dreading all along. They were sitting on her couch, the soft glow of the television flickering in the background. Their legs brushed against each other, a constant reminder of the closeness they had come to share. Lucas was talking about something, his voice light, but Lena wasn't really listening. Her mind was elsewhere. It wasn't that she didn't want to be there with him. It was that she could feel the weight of her own thoughts pressing down on her. She knew she couldn't keep pretending that her past didn't exist. She couldn't keep hiding from it, not with him. She took a deep breath, then turned to face him, her heart racing. "Lucas," she began, her voice unsteady. "There's something I need to tell you." He looked at her, immediately sensing the shift in her tone. His smile faded just a little, replaced by a more serious expression. "What is it?" Lena hesitated, the words threatening to choke her. But she couldn't keep carrying this weight any longer. "I'm not the person you think I am," she said, her voice trembling slightly. "There's a lot in my past that I've kept hidden, things I've never told anyone, things that shaped me into who I am now." Lucas didn't respond immediately. He simply watched her, his eyes soft and patient. He didn't push her to explain, didn't rush her. And that was enough to make her feel a little braver. "I've been afraid that if you knew everything about me you'd leave," she whispered, her voice small in the quiet of the room. "That it would be too much for you to handle." For a long moment, Lucas didn't say a word. He just reached out, taking her hand in his. The warmth of his touch grounded her in a way that nothing else could. His eyes were steady, his expression soft, as though he was processing her words, letting them sink in. Finally, after what felt like an eternity, he spoke, his voice low and sincere. "Lena, whatever it is, whatever happened in your past, it doesn't change how I feel about you. I'm here. And I'm not going anywhere." The weight that had been pressing on her chest began to lift. Just a little. She didn't know how much of her story she would ever be able to share with him, or if she would ever be able to fully let go of the fears that kept her locked away. But in that moment, Lena realized that she didn't have to carry the burden alone anymore. Maybe, just maybe, she was ready to let someone in. Chapter 4. The walls begin to crumble. Lena woke the next morning with the lingering warmth of Lucas's words still echoing in her mind. His calm, unwavering support had left a mark on her heart, and she couldn't help but wonder if perhaps, for the first time in a long while, she was on the brink of something that could truly change her life. But as she stared at her reflection in the bathroom mirror, the familiar knot of doubt twisted in her stomach. She wasn't sure if she was ready to confront everything from her past, or if she even wanted to. It felt safer to keep the walls up, to protect herself from the possibility of getting hurt. But Lucas made her question that. He made her wonder if maybe the walls were unnecessary, if maybe they were the very things standing between her and the kind of love she had always longed for. Her phone buzzed with a text message, and she grabbed it, hoping it was from him. Her heart skipped when she saw the message was from Lucas. Lucas, I've been thinking a lot about what you said last night. Whatever happened, it doesn't scare me. I care about you, Lena, and I want to be there for you. So whenever you're ready, I'll be here. His words were a balm, soothing the anxiety that had been slowly building within her. But they also caused something else, an ache, a deep yearning to believe him completely. The truth was, she didn't know if she was ready to be completely honest, not just with him, but with herself. Could she let go of the shame she'd carried for so long? Could she allow herself to trust, to be vulnerable? Taking a deep breath, Lena put the phone down. She had no answers, but she had to make a decision. The more she pushed away, the more she'd risk losing something that, despite all her doubts, felt real. Maybe it was time to stop running. Maybe it was time to start being honest. About her past, about her fears, and about what she wanted with Lucas. A few days later, after a week of feeling like she was walking on a tightrope between the past and the present, Lena found herself sitting across from Lucas at the same cafe where they had shared their first date. This time, however, there was a palpable tension between them, a quiet understanding that something important needed to be said. Lucas noticed it too, his eyes searching hers as he stirred his coffee absent-mindedly. "Lena," he began softly, his voice hesitant, as though choosing each word carefully. "I know you've been carrying a lot, and I don't want to pressure you. But I need you to know that I'm not going to leave. Whatever it is, we'll figure it out together. You don't have to carry it alone." She met his gaze, and for the first time in a long time, she didn't look away. Her heart raced as she opened her mouth to speak, the words almost escaping her before she stopped herself. She had to do this. She had to share her story, even if it terrified her. "You're right," she said, her voice shaky but determined. "I've been pushing you away, and I've been pushing myself away too. There's something I've never told anyone, not in its entirety. But I think it's time." Lucas put down his coffee cup, his full attention on her. His eyes never left hers, unwavering, patient. He didn't interrupt, didn't push her for details. He simply waited. And that waiting, that silence, gave her the space she needed to find the courage to speak. "I've been afraid for a long time," she started, her voice low, barely above a whisper. "Afraid of trusting people, afraid of what it might mean if I let myself believe in something. When I was younger, I went through something that left me scarred. My trust was broken in ways I didn't know how to heal from, and I promised myself I wouldn't let anyone in again. I thought if I built walls I could protect myself. But I was wrong, and I've spent so long carrying this pain that I've forgotten what it feels like to just live, to feel free." Her chest tightened, and for a moment, she thought she might suffocate under the weight of the vulnerability she was letting out. But Lucas reached across the table, taking her hand in his. His touch was gentle, warm, as if assuring her that she wasn't alone in this. "You don't have to go through it alone, Lena," he said softly, his voice steady and sincere. "Whatever it is, I'm here. I don't need to know every detail right now, but I want you to know that I care about you. And I'm not going anywhere." Lena's heart swelled in her chest, and the tears she had been holding back finally fell. She let herself cry, letting go of the shame that had haunted her for years. She cried for the girl who had been hurt, for the woman who had learned to carry that hurt with her in silence. And she cried for the possibility that maybe, just maybe, she could let go of it all. Lucas didn't rush her, didn't offer empty words of comfort. He simply sat there with her, holding her hand, letting her release the pain that she had locked away for so long. After that day, Lena felt a shift in herself. She didn't have all the answers, but for the first time in years, she felt lighter. She had allowed herself to be vulnerable, to trust someone with her truth. And Lucas, with his quiet strength and patience, had proven that maybe, just maybe, there was space in her life for love again. Their relationship deepened in the weeks that followed. They shared more about their pasts, about their fears, their mistakes, and their hopes for the future. Every conversation, every shared moment, brought them closer, creating a bond that felt undeniable. But Lena knew that the road ahead wouldn't be without challenges. Her past wouldn't just vanish, and there would be times when she felt the weight of it all. But with Lucas by her side, she no longer felt like she was carrying the burden alone. As their relationship grew, so did her sense of hope. Hope that love wasn't just for other people, that it could be for her too. That maybe, just maybe, she could finally open her heart to something real. Chapter 5. Healing but not without struggle. Lena found herself navigating the delicate dance between healing and fear. Her relationship with Lucas was unlike anything she had ever experienced. Every day there was a small step forward, a little more trust, a deeper understanding of each other. But even though the walls had come down, the echoes of her past still lingered, like the remnants of a storm that had passed but left behind traces of its power. She often wondered if Lucas truly understood the complexity of her struggle. The nights when she woke in a cold sweat, reliving moments of betrayal. The days when she felt small, insignificant, like the weight of the past would crush her under its heaviness. But every time she questioned herself, she would think of him. How patient he had been, how kind and accepting, how willing to stand by her side even when things felt difficult. But there were moments when Lena still pulled back, moments when the fear gripped her tightly and she wondered if she was doing the right thing. Could she truly let go of the past? Could she trust him completely? And more importantly, could she trust herself to love him the way he deserved? It was one of those days, a day when the lingering shadows of her doubts seemed more suffocating than ever, that Lucas surprised her. They had spent the morning at an art exhibit, something she had suggested after one of their conversations about the things that inspired them. As they strolled through the gallery, sharing thoughts about the paintings, the sculptures, Lena felt herself slowly relax. There was a sense of peace in the space, an unspoken understanding between them that transcended words. But when they sat down in the quiet cafe at the corner of the gallery, the air between them felt heavy again. Lena's gaze flickered over to Lucas, who had been unusually quiet, watching her with that steady gaze of his, the one that always seemed to see straight into her soul. She felt his eyes on her, and the familiar knot of tension tightened in her chest. "You've been distant," he said, his voice soft but knowing. "I can see it, Lena. I know you're still struggling with this. You've come so far, but I can tell you're still holding back." She froze, her fork halfway to her mouth. It wasn't that she didn't know he was right. It was that hearing it out loud made it feel too real. Her walls had come down, but she wasn't ready to expose everything, not yet. There was so much more she needed to work through, and she wasn't sure if she was strong enough to face it all. But the look in his eyes told her that he wasn't asking for perfection. He wasn't expecting her to be completely healed in the blink of an eye. He just wanted to know the truth. "I don't know how to do this, Lucas," she admitted quietly, putting the fork down. "I don't know how to be the person you see me as. I'm still so scared. There are days when I feel like I'm drowning in all of it, in my past, in my own head, and I don't know how to let go." His gaze softened, and he reached across the table, taking her hand gently in his. "Lena, it's okay. You don't have to have it all figured out right now. It's okay to be scared. We don't have to fix everything at once." His words, simple yet profound, wrapped around her heart like a lifeline. She hadn't realized just how much she needed to hear them until he said them aloud. All this time she had been so focused on being strong, on being perfect, that she had forgotten what it meant to be human, to feel the weight of her past without shame, to let herself be vulnerable without fear of rejection. "I'm trying, Lucas," she said, her voice trembling. "I swear I am. I want to let you in. I want to trust you, but there's so much inside of me that's still broken. And sometimes I wonder if it will ever be enough. If I'll ever be enough." He squeezed her hand gently, his voice steady. Lena, you are enough. You don't have to be anything other than what you are right now. I don't need you to be perfect. I need you to be you. All of you, the beautiful, complicated, imperfect you. The sincerity in his voice melted away the last of her resistance. Tears welled in her eyes, but this time they were different. They weren't born of fear or sadness. They were born of relief. Of knowing that, for the first time in a long time, she wasn't alone in this. That someone saw her, all of her, and loved her anyway. In the days that followed, Lena found herself slowly opening up more to Lucas. It wasn't easy. There were times when the weight of her past felt too heavy to carry, when she thought it might overwhelm her. But every time she shared a piece of herself with him, every time she allowed herself to be vulnerable, the walls she had spent so long building seemed to crumble a little more. They spent hours together, talking, walking, simply being present with each other in ways that felt like healing in itself. Lucas never rushed her, never pushed her to go faster than she was ready for. He was patient, understanding, and for the first time, Lena felt like she could be vulnerable without fear of judgment or abandonment. But just as things seemed to be heading in the right direction, an unexpected challenge arose. One evening, Lena received a phone call from her mother. The conversation started out innocuously, discussing the usual things: family events, her mother's health, their upcoming plans. But then the conversation took a turn. "Lena, I know you've been spending a lot of time with that guy. Lucas, was it?" Her mother's voice was casual, but there was an underlying tension that Lena immediately picked up on. "Yes, Lucas," Lena replied, unsure of where the conversation was going. "Why?" "Well, I just wanted to say." Her mother paused, and Lena could hear the hesitation in her voice. "You know, your father and I have always wanted what's best for you. And I just want to make sure you're not rushing into anything too quickly. You need to be careful. Relationships like this, they can be complicated." Lena's heart sank. She knew what her mother was implying. She was insinuating that Lena's past would catch up to her, that she wasn't ready for a relationship with someone like Lucas. She opened her mouth to respond, but before she could, her mother continued. "I just don't want to see you hurt again, Lena. You've been through so much already. Maybe it's time to focus on yourself, not someone else." The words stung more than Lena cared to admit. She had heard this type of advice from her mother before, but hearing it now, when she was finally beginning to trust herself and trust Lucas, felt like a betrayal. She could feel the old familiar doubt creeping in, the fear that maybe her mother was right, that she wasn't ready for this, that maybe Lucas would leave her once he saw the truth of her past. "Mom, I can handle this. I know what I'm doing," she said, her voice barely above a whisper. "I just want what's best for you," her mother replied, the conversation tapering off into an uncomfortable silence. Lena sat there for a long moment after the call ended, her heart heavy with the weight of her mother's words. She knew what her mother had been through, how her own past had affected her. But this wasn't about her mother's fears. It was about Lena's life, her future. She picked up her phone and texted Lucas. "Lena, can we meet? I need to talk." The response came quickly. "Lucas, of course. I'm here. Where should I meet you?" Chapter 6. The Silent Storm. Lena couldn't remember the last time she had felt so conflicted. The weight of her mother's words still lingered in the air, thick and suffocating. She knew her mother only wanted to protect her, but that didn't change the fact that it felt like another chain wrapped around her heart, another obstacle between her and the life she was beginning to build with Lucas. For the first time in years, she was beginning to let someone in, to believe that maybe, just maybe, she could be loved in the way she had always dreamed of. But now there was doubt. She needed to see Lucas. She needed to hear his voice, see his steady gaze, and remember why she was fighting so hard to move forward. And so, after a long pause, she had sent the message. She needed to meet him. She needed to talk to him. As she sat in the cafe, her hands wrapped tightly around the warm mug of tea in front of her, she watched the door, her stomach a twisted knot of anxiety and anticipation. The cafe, usually a peaceful escape, felt too quiet, too still. Her mind raced with thoughts she couldn't quite silence. What if her mother was right? What if she wasn't ready for this? What if she messed everything up? What if Lucas saw the truth of who she was, of what her past had made her, and walked away? She was so lost in her thoughts that she didn't notice Lucas until he was standing right in front of her. His presence steady and calming. His dark hair was slightly tousled, his gray jacket slightly askew from the cold, but as always, he carried himself with that quiet, unspoken strength that made her feel safe, even when she didn't deserve it. "Hey," he said softly, his voice a familiar comfort. "Sorry I'm a little late. The traffic was a nightmare." Lena smiled faintly, still trying to compose herself. The last few days had been a blur of emotions, of moments of closeness and doubt, and now, standing in front of him, she felt herself unraveling again. "You're fine," she said, voice soft but shaky. I just needed to see you." Lucas's brow furrowed in concern, and he slid into the seat across from her. "What's going on, Lena? You asked to meet, and I can tell something's wrong. You look like you've been carrying the weight of the world on your shoulders." She took a deep breath, her heart pounding in her chest. This was it. The moment where she had to let him in, even if it terrified her. "I talked to my mom," Lena said, her voice quiet. She doesn't think I should be in a relationship right now. She thinks I'm rushing things, that I'm not ready. She said that I need to focus on myself, that I've been through too much to get involved with someone else." Lucas's face softened, and he reached across the table, taking her hand in his. He didn't need to say anything. His touch alone was enough to calm the storm inside of her. But still, she couldn't stop the words from tumbling out. "And I'm scared, Lucas. I'm scared that she's right. That I'm not ready for this. That maybe I'm too broken for someone like you. I keep thinking that I'm going to mess this up, that I'm going to push you away or ruin everything. I don't know if I can handle the pressure of it all." Lucas didn't pull away, didn't look away, and didn't try to fill the silence with words. He simply looked at her, his gaze steady, unwavering. "You don't have to be perfect, Lena," he said finally, his voice calm, almost gentle. "You don't have to have it all together. I'm not looking for perfection. I'm looking for you, exactly as you are. You don't have to carry this alone. You don't have to hide pieces of yourself from me." Her breath caught in her throat, and for a moment, she thought she might lose her composure entirely. His words were simple, but they hit her harder than she expected. The truth was, she didn't have to carry everything by herself. She didn't have to hide, to retreat, to protect herself from feeling too much. She could trust him even if it meant being vulnerable, even if it meant being scared. "Lucas," she whispered, her voice shaking. "I don't know how to let go. I don't know how to stop being scared." His hand gently cupped her face, his touch warm and grounding. "I'm not asking you to let go all at once. I'm just asking you to let me in a little bit at a time. I can't promise that everything will be perfect or easy, but I can promise that I'm here. For as long as you want me to be." Tears welled up in Lena's eyes, and this time she didn't try to stop them. She didn't try to hold back the flood of emotions that had been building for so long. All the fear, all the doubt, all the pain, it all came pouring out, and Lucas was right there, holding her hand, his presence a steady anchor. For the first time in ages, she felt the chains of her past loosening. Not all of them, not yet, but enough that she could breathe again. Enough that she could begin to believe that maybe, just maybe, she was deserving of love. In the weeks that followed, Lena's relationship with Lucas deepened in ways she hadn't anticipated. It wasn't easy. There were still days when the shadows of her past crept in, moments when she questioned everything, when the doubt threatened to swallow her whole. But Lucas was there, quiet, patient, always ready to listen, always ready to remind her that she didn't have to be perfect. They took things slow. Lucas never rushed her, never pressured her to move faster than she was ready for. Instead, they spent time together, talking, laughing, enjoying each other's company, finding new ways to connect that didn't feel overwhelming. The more time they spent together, the more Lena began to realize that the fear she had been carrying for so long wasn't as powerful as she had once believed. She could let go. She could trust again. But just as things were starting to feel stable, A sudden and unexpected twist shook Lena's world to its core. It started with a message. An unfamiliar name, a message that simply read, "I need to speak with you. It's important. Call me when you can." Lena stared at the message, her heart thudding in her chest. There was something about it that felt wrong, something that stirred the ghosts of her past back to life. She didn't know who it was from, but she knew that the past had come knocking, and she wasn't sure she was ready to face it. Would this new twist tear her apart, or could she and Lucas overcome whatever was coming next? Chapter 7. Echoes from the Past. Lena stared at the message for what felt like an eternity. Her thumb hovered over the screen, her mind racing. The name that appeared at the top of the message was unfamiliar to her, and yet a deep, unshakable feeling stirred in her gut. She had seen that name before. Or maybe she hadn't. The past she had buried so deep was threatening to resurface in the most unexpected of ways. Her heart pounded in her chest as her thoughts scrambled to make sense of it. Was it someone from her past? Someone she had deliberately cut ties with? Or was it someone new? Someone who had stumbled into her life just as things had started to feel right? She wasn't sure which option scared her more. The room felt too small, the walls closing in around her as she stared at the message. She wanted to ignore it, pretend it wasn't there, but something about it made her feel like she had no choice but to open it. She had come so far. So much of the pain from her past had been left behind in the dark corners of her mind. She had built something beautiful with Lucas. She wasn't sure if she was ready to let that go, but she had to know. She had to face whatever this was. Slowly, she typed out a response. "Lena, who is this? And what's so important?" Her hands trembled as she sent the message, her heart racing faster with every second that passed. She barely had time to set the phone down before a new message pinged back. Unknown. "It's important, Lena. We need to talk, please." A sudden wave of dizziness overtook her. The words felt too familiar, too ominous. The voice she had so desperately tried to forget, the one she had buried deep inside her, seemed to echo in her mind. The dread she had spent years trying to outrun had returned, relentless, clawing at the walls she had built. Lena couldn't breathe. She didn't want to open the door to this part of her past. It was too painful, too raw. The memories of the broken pieces of herself that she had to patch together seemed far too fragile to risk shattering. But she knew deep down she had no choice. The past was never really behind her. It had merely waited for the perfect moment to reappear, to remind her of everything she had lost. A few hours later, Lucas arrived at her apartment. He had sensed that something was wrong the moment she'd ended their call earlier. His voice full of concern and empathy when he asked, "Lena, is everything okay?" But Lena had only shaken her head, unable to explain the chaos swirling inside her. She didn't want to drag him into it, to burden him with the ghosts that still haunted her. But she knew deep down that Lucas was different. He was the person who had stayed by her side when she was at her lowest, the one who believed in her when she didn't believe in herself. She couldn't keep hiding from him, not anymore. As soon as he stepped into her apartment, she could feel the tension in the air. Lucas could always read her like a book, and tonight, he didn't even need to ask. The unease in her eyes, the tightness of her jaw, the way her hands clenched and unclenched in her lap. He could tell something was wrong. "What happened?" he asked softly, his voice full of concern. He sat down next to her on the couch, his presence a comforting weight. "I don't know," Lena whispered, her voice cracking. She felt her throat tighten as she fought back the tears. "Someone from my past. They reached out. They want to talk. But I don't know what they want. I don't even know if I can handle this." Lucas reached out, his hand resting gently on hers, grounding her in the moment. "Lena, whatever it is, we can face it together. I'm here always. You don't have to go through this alone." His words wrapped around her like a lifeline, but the weight of the unknown still pressed down on her chest. She nodded, swallowing her fear. "I don't know if I can do this, Lucas. I've worked so hard to move forward, to leave everything behind. But now, It feels like it's all coming back to haunt me. You're stronger than you think, he said gently, his fingers brushing a strand of hair away from her face. We'll take it one step at a time. We'll face whatever this is together. You don't have to carry this on your own. Lena's heart swelled with love for him. She knew he meant it, that he would be there for her no matter what. But the uncertainty still lingered, gnawing at her. What if this was too much for her to bear? What if her past was something she couldn't escape, something that would destroy the future she was trying so hard to build? Her phone buzzed again, snapping her out of her spiraling thoughts. She glanced down at the message and felt a chill run down her spine. Unknown. It's time, Lena. The truth is waiting. Don't run away from it. Her breath caught in her throat, and she looked at Lucas, her eyes wide with fear. I have to meet them. I don't know what else to do. I need to face this. Lucas squeezed her hand, his eyes unwavering. Whatever you need, I'm here. You're not alone, Lena. I'll be with you every step of the way. Lena's heart was racing as she walked toward the cafe where the mysterious person had asked to meet. The air was thick with tension, and each step felt like a small eternity. She didn't know what to expect, didn't know who this person was or what they wanted from her. The only thing she knew was that she was walking straight into the heart of her past, and there was no turning back. When she arrived, the cafe was nearly empty, the late hour casting a dim, almost eerie light over the tables. She scanned the room, her pulse quickening, until her eyes landed on a figure sitting alone at the back table. Man. Tall, broad-shouldered, with an air of familiarity that struck her like a jolt of electricity. As she walked toward him, the pieces of the past fell into place, each memory rushing back to her with an intensity she wasn't ready for. Lena, the man said, his voice a low murmur. The sound of it hit her like a punch to the gut. She froze in her tracks. It was him. Chapter 8. Faces from the Past. The man's voice sent an electric shock through Lena's body, reverberating in her chest like a painful echo. It wasn't just the sound of his voice. It was the feeling, the deep, unmistakable recognition that gnawed at her soul. He was a ghost she thought she had buried long ago. She stood frozen, her mind a whirlwind of emotions. She had never expected this. Not now, not when she was beginning to move forward, to allow herself the possibility of happiness. Her knees felt weak, her breath shallow, and her fingers trembled as they gripped the strap of her bag, the one small thing grounding her in this surreal moment. The man smiled, though it wasn't a smile that reassured her. It was a smile that seemed to acknowledge a past full of secrets, full of pain. His eyes, dark and intense, locked with hers, and for a brief moment, Lena was transported back to a time she had tried to forget. Lena, he repeated, his voice low but firm. It's been a long time. Her heart hammered in her chest as she took a hesitant step forward. She wanted to scream, to run, to tell him to leave her alone. But she couldn't. She was rooted to the spot, caught between the desire to escape and the need to understand what had brought him back into her life. Why are you here? Lena managed to say, her voice trembling despite her best efforts to remain composed. She wanted to scream, to demand answers, but there was a part of her that was terrified of what he might say. She had done everything she could to move on from the past. She had fought tooth and nail to bury the remnants of a life that had hurt her in ways she couldn't even explain. She wasn't ready for this. She wasn't ready to reopen those wounds. The man sighed, his gaze softening as he leaned back in his chair. There was a moment of hesitation, as though he too was searching for the right words, the right way to breach the silence that had settled between them. I didn't want it to end like this, he began, his voice low and gravelly. But I had no choice, Lena. You have to understand. There were things you didn't know. Things that I couldn't tell you then. Her heart skipped a beat. The past she had thought was closed off, locked away, was starting to seep back into her life. She felt the anger rise within her, bubbling up from the pit of her stomach. The betrayal, the lies, the feeling of being discarded and forgotten, those memories came rushing back with a force she couldn't fight. She had given him everything, And he had left her without a word. Without an explanation. Things I didn't know. What things, Zach? Her voice cracked, the emotion too raw to hide. You walked away without a word. You disappeared. And now, years later, you think you can just show up and make everything okay again. Zach's face faltered, the calm expression he had worn slipping away. For a moment, he seemed vulnerable, almost as if the weight of the years apart had finally begun to settle on his shoulders. I know, he said quietly. I know I was wrong. And I can't ask for your forgiveness. I need you to understand why I left. It wasn't because of you. It wasn't because of anything you did. Lena's chest tightened, her breath shallow as she tried to steady herself. This wasn't what she had expected. This wasn't the confrontation she had envisioned. The truth, the real truth, had always been buried under layers of hurt and confusion. And now, for the first time, it was being unearthed. But at what cost? Zach leaned forward, his eyes earnest and filled with an emotion Lena hadn't seen in years. Lena, there were things in my life, things I was tangled up in, that I couldn't bring you into. I wanted to, I really did. But I wasn't in a place where I could protect you. I was involved with people who wouldn't hesitate to hurt you if they thought you meant anything to me. Lena's mind reeled. She remembered the whispers, the strange silences, the nights when he was distant and unreachable. She had always known something was off, but she never imagined this. You mean to tell me you left me because of… what? Some dangerous people you were mixed up with? Zach nodded, his jaw tense. Yes. And I didn't want to drag you into it. I thought I could walk away from them and keep you safe, but I couldn't. I wasn't strong enough. So I did what I thought was best, I left. I thought it was the only way to protect you. Tears welled in Lena's eyes as the realization hit her like a hammer. She had spent years blaming herself, thinking that there was something wrong with her, that she had been too much, that she had pushed him away. But now, in this moment, she understood. He hadn't left because of her. He had left because he was trapped in a world she couldn't even begin to comprehend. I wanted to tell you, Lena, he said, his voice breaking slightly. I wanted to come back so many times, but I knew I couldn't. Not until I made sure that I was free from them. That they couldn't touch you, couldn't hurt you. Lena shook her head, fighting the whirlwind of emotions that threatened to overwhelm her. She wasn't sure how to feel. Anger, relief, confusion. All of it was churning inside her, making it impossible to think clearly. She had spent so long blaming him, so long thinking that she had been abandoned without reason, that now she felt unmoored, like everything she had built with Lucas was somehow floating on unstable ground. I don't know what to say, Zach, she whispered, her voice trembling. I don't know if I can forgive you. I don't know if I even want to try. Zach's face hardened for a moment, but his eyes never left hers. I don't expect you to forgive me. I needed you to know. I needed you to hear the truth. The silence stretched between them, thick and heavy, as Lena tried to process everything he had just revealed. She wanted to scream, to run away, to block it all out and pretend it never happened. But the truth had been laid bare before her, and no matter how much she wanted to deny it, she couldn't unhear what she had just learned. Suddenly, Lena felt a familiar warmth on her hand. She looked up and saw Lucas standing in the doorway of the cafe. His eyes filled with a mixture of concern and determination. He had followed her. I think it's time we go, Lena, he said quietly, his voice calm but firm. Lena didn't know what to say. She had never expected to see Lucas here, but the presence of his support, of his understanding, felt like the lifeline she needed. She didn't have to do this alone. She had him, her rock, her safe place. Lena nodded, standing slowly, her legs shaky as she turned to face Zach one last time. I don't know what comes next, she said, her voice hoarse. But I'm not going back to that life. Not now. Not ever. And with that, she left the past behind, walking toward the future she was beginning to build, one step at a time with Lucas by her side. Chapter 9. Building bridges. The air was cooler now, the kind of evening chill that wrapped around your shoulders like a soft blanket. The streets were quieter, the bustling of the cafe and the tension between Lena, Zach, and Lucas fading into the distance. Yet, as they walked side by side, Lena couldn't shake the heavy weight in her chest. The past had collided with her present in a way she hadn't expected, and despite Lucas's comforting presence beside her, the fear of what came next lingered. Her mind kept replaying Zach's words, those painful, raw confessions. It felt surreal that he, the person she once loved, had been caught up in a world she couldn't even begin to understand. But even more unsettling was the fact that all these years, she had believed it was her fault, that somehow she wasn't enough, that her mistakes were the reason he'd left her. But now, with Lucas walking beside her, offering silent support, Lena realized just how much she had built in the years since her relationship with Zach had ended. She had fought through heartache, rebuilt herself from the ground up, and most importantly, found someone who loved her not for who she was pretending to be, but for who she truly was. And Lucas was right there with her, in every moment, helping her face the demons of her past. "You okay?" Lucas asked, his voice low but full of concern. Lena turned her head to meet his gaze, and a small, grateful smile tugged at her lips. "I don't know if I'll ever be okay, not completely, but I'm getting there. I have you." She squeezed his hand, grateful for his unwavering presence. The weight of the world seemed to lift just a little when she was with him, and it gave her the strength to confront whatever came next. "I didn't want to push you into anything, Lena," Lucas said softly, a bit of guilt in his voice. "But I just couldn't stand the idea of you dealing with all of this alone. I know you're strong, but you don't have to carry everything on your own." Lena's heart warmed. He was always there, always ready to support her, no matter the situation. "You've been more than I ever expected, Lucas. I can't tell you how much that means to me." They reached her apartment, and Lena stopped in the doorway, her gaze lingering on the night sky. The city's glow bathed everything in a soft golden hue, but it didn't quite mask the feeling that something had shifted. Something deep inside her. "I feel like I should be angry," Lena said suddenly, her voice almost a whisper. "Angry at him for coming back into my life, for reopening old wounds, for the things I never got answers to." Lucas nodded. "It's okay to feel that way. It's natural. But I don't want to be angry," Lena admitted, her voice breaking slightly. "I want to move forward. I've worked so hard to put that part of me behind. And now I have you. And I'm scared that this past is going to hurt what we're building." Lucas stepped closer, his fingers brushing hers. "I'm not going anywhere, Lena. Whatever this past is, we're going to face it together. And you don't have to deal with any of it on your own. You've already come so far. I'm proud of you." Lena's throat tightened, and she blinked away the tears that threatened to spill over. He didn't know how much those words meant to her. He didn't know how many nights she had spent doubting herself, wondering if she could ever be enough. But with Lucas beside her, with his steady love and unwavering loyalty, she was starting to believe she could be. "I don't know what's going to happen next," she said softly. "But I know one thing. I'm not going to let the past dictate my future anymore. Not with you by my side." Lucas smiled and cupped her face gently in his hands. "And I'm not going to let anything take you away from me. You're not alone, Lena. Not ever again." The days that followed were a blur of emotions. Lena found herself wrestling with a desire to push the past further away, while also feeling an unsettling curiosity about the answers Zach had left her with. The truth, as painful as it was, had offered her a kind of clarity. But clarity didn't make the situation any easier. Zach was still a part of her past, an unresolved piece of her story that had been left incomplete. And now, as much as she didn't want to, she had to face it head-on. Lena spent the next week in quiet contemplation. She spoke to Lucas about it, of course, but there were still moments where the weight of it all bore down on her. The thought of seeing Zach again, of hearing his side of things, made her stomach turn. She didn't want to face the possibility that he might have been right, that there were things she would never fully understand. But she also realized that for her own peace of mind, she had to face it. She had to find closure. One evening, as the sun dipped below the horizon, casting the sky in shades of purple and gold, Lena received another message from Zach. She hadn't replied to his last one, but she knew the time had come. She couldn't keep ignoring him forever. "Zach, I understand if you're angry, but I need you to know something. I never stopped loving you." The words were simple, yet they sent a ripple of emotion through her chest. She had spent so long burying her feelings for him, trying to move forward without looking back. But now, with this message, the floodgates had opened. The lingering questions, the unresolved pain, the guilt, it all came rushing back. With a deep breath, Lena typed her response. "Lena, I don't know what's left to say, Zach, but I need answers. I need the truth." A few minutes later, his reply came through. "Meet me tomorrow, same place as before. We need to finish this." The next day, Lena walked into the cafe where they had met before. The memories of that night, of the emotions she had felt, still lingered in the back of her mind. She wasn't sure what she was going to find, but she had come to one conclusion. She couldn't keep hiding from the past. She couldn't let it control her anymore. As she walked to the back of the cafe, she saw Zach sitting at the same table. This time, his expression was more somber, as though he, too, felt the weight of everything left unsaid. She sat down across from him, her heart pounding in her chest. "Lena," Zach said, his voice quiet, "I don't know how to explain it, but I need you to understand everything I did to protect you. I didn't leave because I didn't love you. I left because I couldn't keep you safe. And I didn't know how to tell you that without losing you forever." Lena took a deep breath, her heart heavy with the knowledge that there were still pieces of this puzzle missing. But for the first time in a long while, she wasn't afraid to confront them. "I'm listening," she said softly. Chapter 10, Full Circle. The cafe buzzed softly in the background, the low hum of voices blending with the clink of coffee cups and the occasional sound of a chair scraping across the floor. But in that moment, there was only silence between Lena and Zach. The weight of the years that had passed hung in the air, heavy and thick with untold truths and broken promises. Lena's heart raced, her emotions torn between the past and the present, between Zach and Lucas. But most of all, she felt an overwhelming desire for clarity, for peace. Zach's eyes were filled with a depth of emotion that Lena hadn't seen in years. His face, once so familiar, now seemed foreign, as if the time apart had created a chasm between them that she wasn't sure how to cross. "I didn't want to drag you into my mess," he said, his voice tight, almost breaking. "I didn't want to put you in danger. That's why I pushed you away. But I was selfish, Lena. I thought I could protect you by keeping you away, but the truth is, I should have trusted you. I should have trusted us." Lena's breath caught in her throat. She had wanted answers, wanted the truth. But hearing him say this was almost more than she could bear. All these years, she had wondered what went wrong, what caused him to disappear without a trace. She had blamed herself, but now, the pieces of the puzzle were falling into place. He had been trying to protect her in his own twisted way, but in doing so, he had only hurt her more. "I don't know how to feel right now," Lena whispered, her voice trembling. "You left me, Zach. You left without a word, and I was left with nothing. Do you know how that felt? To have someone you loved disappear without a trace." Zach's expression hardened for a moment, but there was no anger in his eyes, only regret. "I know. And I'm sorry. I can't change the past, but I'm here now. I want to make things right, Lena. I've spent years trying to get out of the life I was in, and now that I finally have, all I want is to make amends. To be the person you deserve." Lena's heart ached as she listened to his words. Part of her wanted to forgive him, to let him back in, to give him the chance he never got. But there was another part of her, one that had grown stronger over the years, one that had learned to heal without him, that knew she couldn't go back. She couldn't undo the hurt, the confusion, the years of loneliness. "I wish I could believe you," she said softly, her fingers tracing the edge of her coffee cup. "But I've spent so much time healing. And I found someone who makes me feel safe, who makes me feel loved without all the mess and pain. I've learned that I don't need you to be happy. I don't need that version of you anymore. Zach's face fell, and for a moment, Lena could see the man she had once loved, the man who had meant the world to her, the man who had hurt her beyond words. She could see him fighting with himself, struggling with the truth of what she was saying. But deep down she knew it was the right choice. The past had shaped her, but it didn't define her. She wasn't that same girl anymore. She had grown. She had built something new, something real, with someone who truly cared for her. Zach stood up, his hands trembling slightly as he placed a few bills on the table. He didn't look at Lena as he turned to walk away, but she could see the pain in his posture. It was the pain of loss, of regret, of knowing that he had missed his chance. Lena didn't chase after him. She didn't run after the ghost of her past. Instead, she sat there in that moment, letting the finality of it wash over her. It was over. She had closure. She could finally let go. Later that evening, when she returned home, she found Lucas waiting for her on the couch, his eyes soft with concern. Without a word, she sat down beside him, her head resting on his shoulder. He didn't ask her about the meeting with Zach, and she was grateful for that. She didn't need to explain. For a long while they sat there in silence, the only sound the quiet rhythm of their breathing. And in that moment Lena realized that this was what true peace felt like. Not in the absence of pain, but in the acceptance of it. She had faced her past. She had confronted the demons she had buried. And now she was free. Free to move forward. Free to love without fear. Finally, Lena lifted her head and looked into Lucas's eyes. "Thank you," she whispered, her voice full of gratitude. "For being here. For not giving up on me." Lucas smiled softly and kissed the top of her head. "You don't have to thank me. I'm not going anywhere, Lena. You've already given me more than I ever could have hoped for. And I'll be here every step of the way." And with that, Lena knew she was exactly where she was meant to be. She had walked through the darkness, through the pain, and emerged stronger, braver, and more whole than she had ever been before. Lena had learned that love wasn't just about the past. It was about the present, the choices you made, and the people you let into your life. She had faced her ghosts and made her peace. Now it was time to build a future filled with hope, with love, and with someone who truly understood her. And for the first time in a long while, Lena felt ready. The end.